Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I've got to admit, it feels like a home gig. I've done that many talks at the Deep. We stage our own T2 talks here, and I've done some other ones recently as well. So this morning, I've got about 25 minutes max, and I was wondering how I was going to spend that time wisely with you, and if I could leave you with anything in Biz Week to go way back into your businesses and think about. Now, when we sat down a few months ago, we talked about the title of this particular event. And I feel really passionate about people, about unlocking the potential in people, starting with ourselves, but also our ability to unlock the potential in others as well. And everything we do at Trans2, every program we deliver and every client we work with, we heavily focus on this area. But what I was explaining to Claire and Pat when we sat down over coffee was that there's actually a hidden truth to unlocking potential. And I know I'm going to talk about that this morning. But before that, I've got a couple of questions, and I'd just like you to raise your hand to these two questions. First question, raise your hand if you've got children in the audience. Pretty much most of us. Okay, second question, raise your hand if you have staff or any direct reports or anybody who reports into you. So I think between us all, we've got either children or staff covered off. The first thing I'm going to say this morning is this. You view your staff like you view your children. I mean it, you view your staff like you view your children. Let me explain a little bit more. For those of you who said you've got children, I don't care what you say, you have a favourite. Now, I ask this question to people all the time, which is your favourite child? And they always say, don't be silly, Martin, I like all my children the same. Rubbish. We have a favourite. Right? It's usually the firstborn, or if it's not the firstborn, it's the one that sticks to the rules. It's the nice one, right? It's the one that says, yes, I will do that first time every time. It's the one that gives you the least hassle, a kind-natured child. And then we have a second child. And this second child can only be described as feral. I mean, and as a father of three, I can speak for myself here. This second child is feral. They don't stick to the rules. You know, they challenge the status quo. You spend your entire time trying to guide and discipline this child. And all I can describe it as is they cost you days and weeks of frustration, but they're capable of moments of brilliance. And that's the feral child. And then for you, those of you like me who are brave enough or silly enough to have 3 children, the third child, I mean, has anybody seen the third child? I mean, it's okay, they'll be all right. They'll be all right. And this is it. This is how we view our children. And it's the same with your staff. I see it all the time in businesses. You have the staff that you like. You have the staff that you like, the ones who stick to the rules and fill in the systems and don't give you too much grief and they get on with their job. You also have the staff that you don't like. You have the staff that you don't like, the ones who cause you problems, who challenge, who feel like they're negative at times and they're challenging for the sake of challenging, but at times, again, in the workplace, they're capable of brilliance. And then you have the rest of your staff, like the poor third child, who go under the radar. And actually, you can go 3 or 4 days without even seeing them. You know, what's happening with John? And what's my serious point here? My serious point is when we look at people and when we form a perception of people, we do so on what I call the above the waterline behaviours, characteristics and traits of them with our children or our staff. And that is the main thing that influences our opinion of other people, don't get me wrong. But I'm here this morning to talk to you about something that's a bit deeper than that, because we need to understand our people on a deep level. What is it that is driving and regulating that behaviour? And if we can uncover that in ourselves, we can unlock some further potential. And if we can uncover it in our people, it's immensely powerful. So you can see here on the screen, if I elaborate a little bit more, when we work with people at Trans2, we call this the Human Iceberg. Because if you can understand the Human Iceberg, you can really coach and mentor people and unlock some serious potential. Everything I talked about then at the start is above the waterline, behaviours, traits and characteristics. It's what we see and it's what we hear. Now, 90% of training that I come across or that I observe focuses on the above the waterline characteristics, traits and behaviours, or knowledge and information. 90%. And very few are capable at going down and really uncovering what it is that's driving people and driving our employees and ourselves at times. Now, You will have come across certain training above the waterline like Myers-Briggs. Some of you in the room have done Myers-Briggs testing and personality tools, social style, colours and insights. You do communications training, leadership and management training, sales and customer service. All these things where we try and influence the behaviours above the waterline. And it's immensely powerful. It's immensely popular. And if it's done correctly, it can have an impact on the business. But do you ever find that sometimes you roll out these training programs and they last for a very short amount of time? You get a quick and sudden spike in productivity, or you get a quick impact, and then sooner or later certain things happen in the business and they revert to type. This happens quite a lot because we have to try to uncover what's beneath this waterline. A couple of observations here. 3 things we know about human behaviours, to summarise my first point. They significantly influence our perception of others. It's why we have a favourite child, right? They can be productive or counterproductive behaviours. And they can flex, change, and evolve over time. So this is why learning and development and training exists, because we're constantly trying to evolve our actions, characteristics, and behaviours. But we need to go to the second level of the iceberg, the human iceberg. Now, I call these core motivators. We use a testing tool called Print. I know some of the people in the room are familiar with Print and are accredited in Print and familiar with it. It's from the Paul Hertz Group in the US. And Print is slightly different in the way that it tries to uncover what it is inside us that's manifested over the years in the form of our motivators that is driving that positive and negative behavior. It's a really, really unique tool. I call them core motivators. Now, the interesting thing in psychology around this is between the ages of 1 to 21, 1 to 16 is the official scientific output. Between 1 to 21, we form these unconscious motivators in us through 3 major environments. The first environment is our parental exposure growing up. The second is our educational exposure. And the final one is our social exposure. Those 3 dynamics between the ages of 1 and 21, pretty much as we go through life, formulate 1 or 2 significant motivators within us. And these are known as your unconscious motivators. And then you go the rest of your life trying to satisfy and fulfill these motivators. And if we get them fulfilled and we have them satisfied, we will stay productive and in best self. And our behaviors will be the ones that we want to portray. And if they are not satisfied, we can get triggered into what we call shadow behavior or counterproductive behavior. So uncovering unconscious motivators is a really, really important thing because they are the things that regulate our behaviors every single day. It's not an easy thing to do. And what we do as part of a bigger program on the Human Iceberg is we make sure that one of the first things we deliver to our people is getting to understand them, their unconscious motivators. These are the 9 human motivators that come out of the Print testing. Now, like other psychometric tests where Myers-Briggs, there's 16 variations of profiling, insights, there are 4 different colours and social styles. This gets pretty deep and significant and scientific. There are 9 motivators. You take a test and it's looking for you to answer in your unconscious state. It will then measure on a percentage scale your match against these 9 core human motivators, and you will come out with 1 or 2 winners. And the 1 or 2 winners will be significant enough to regulate your behaviour. And that's what we need to uncover and understand. What is it that's motivating us? I won't read them out one by one with the time I've got this morning. But what I will say is I'll share mine with you. My unconscious motivators are an 8 and a 3. To be strong and self-reliant and to succeed and achieve. So if I'm not strong and self-reliant and I'm not independent and people try to curtail my independence or micromanage me, I start to get triggered into counterproductive behaviour. If I am failing in what I'm doing and not perceived to being successful, I get triggered into counterproductive behaviour. If my suggestions in the workplace are questioned, I get triggered into counterproductive behaviour. Don't worry, I'm managing it. I'm learning to listen. But because I'm aware of this and because I understand what it means to me, the awareness alone makes me react totally different in different situations, and in turn that unlocks my potential. It makes me deal with something in an entirely different way. I can then work on coping mechanisms to guard against anything that may or may not trigger me intentionally or unintentionally. You need to go away from today and consider trying to unlock your unconscious motivators. What are they in you, and what is it that was instilled and manifested in you from the ages of 1 to 21 that are regulating your behaviors day in, day out? You need to be aware of those, and it's really, really important. And the final section, if you like, of the human iceberg is something that I am genuinely passionate about. It's something that I've spent years building an entire body of research on because it's the final piece of the puzzle. If the top of the iceberg is how we behave and how we externalize ourselves, and therefore the middle section is why the hell we do that in the first place, what are our motivators driving that, then the bottom of the iceberg is where does that come from? In those ages between 1 to 21, what events and what things happened that allowed me to manifest those motivators in me? What was it that created that? And again, this is the only part of the iceberg you cannot do in a group discussion. When we work with teams and programs, and Caroline's going to talk a little bit around Siemens and what we've done there and worked with them at Siemens, when we work with people, we can deliver the top of the iceberg in group format in training sessions. You can deliver the middle in group format. Sense of purpose is incredibly pertinent and personable to an individual. It can't be done in a group environment. It's got to be done one-to-one because it's where it comes from. We talk about parenting, we talk about childhood, we talk about friends, we talk about school years, we talk about first job, we talk about the things that happen, the significant events that happened that just may have triggered those unconscious motivators to manifest. And believe me, when you do this, you connect the dots. The greatest sort of light bulb moment that I see in individuals is when they connect the dots between their sense of purpose and why those motivators have manifested. And therefore they have end-to-end self-awareness. And when we do this, it's an incredibly powerful thing. Now, I haven't got time this morning to go into too much detail, but what I am going to do is share something with you, what our research has provided. Now, when I do these one-to-one sessions with CEOs, executive directors, it might be mid-management, salespeople, individuals, whatever it may be, I go down a line of questioning for about 45 minutes, and I can usually get them to a point where they can connect the dots to their sense of purpose. And almost always it falls into one of these 4 categories. We can trace it back to one of these 4 categories. And I want you to think about yourself when I talk through these quickly to see if you can connect the dots a little bit. It might take more time. The first kind of sense of purpose we come across is people who want to prove something. Really powerful, driven by desire. Desire and fear are the 2 strongest emotions in the human brain. Fear is twice as strong as desire, which is why our anxieties and our fears are far more crippling than our desires will ever be, motivating at times. But people who want to prove a point, prove somebody wrong, prove somebody right, or just prove a point, have an immensely strong sense of purpose. Stories of going back to the school teacher who wrote you off 15, 20 years ago and said, you'll never amount to anything. Stories of parents doing the same thing. Stories of proving somebody right. Your parents might have invested their life savings in putting you through university, and you have to prove that decision right, that faith right. When the human being wants to prove a point, it's an immensely powerful thing. The second category of sense of purpose that we come across in people is when they just are absolutely in the provide box. They've either not been provided for in their early childhood and they want to do that for their children, or they have and they want to replicate it. There's no other motive or no other sense of purpose that's at play here, barring I've got to provide for myself and those around me. It's a strong sense of purpose and it's driven by a need. The third category is achieve. Now, this is an interesting one. These people talk about leaving a legacy. These people talk about having something tangible to show for their efforts, which is why we go through university for 3 years, spending 40, 50,000 pounds to say, we've got that piece of paper at the end of it. I did that. Nobody can take that away from me. You know, people who want to win trophies, honours. I tell you where this is really, really resonant with people who want to climb the career path. People want promotion for the status of the title to say, I did that, I achieved that. I did that, nobody else can take that away from me. So people who wanted to achieve goals, recognition or honours, they're driven by desire. Now the fourth and final category is sense of purpose, which is where mine comes from. And it's arguably the most intrusive, but it's arguably the most powerful that I come across in one-to-one sessions is avoid. And it's the only one of the 4 that's driven by fear. People who want to avoid failure, embarrassment or struggle. Most stories I come across, most sense of purposes that are in people who are in this category come from hardships. They come from hardships. Stories of people growing up with nothing, parents separating, struggle, experiencing early death, whatever it might be. But these people have channeled this And it drives them on every single day to avoid fear, embarrassment, or struggle for them and those around them. It's an incredibly powerful sense of purpose. And I've only touched on the 4 categories there, but you can tell how intrusive this gets at time. So it has to be done cautiously and carefully. But when you can do this and unlock someone's human iceberg, when they get why they behave productive on the good days and counterproductive on the bad days, what is driving and regulating that in terms of motivators and where the hell that comes from, you have maximum self-awareness. And when you are having a wobble or when times are tough, you don't have to think about correcting your behaviors. You just acknowledge your motivators, but it's your sense of purpose that is far more likely to realign you on any given day and get you back on the ship. Sense of purpose is an incredibly powerful thing, and it's something that we really, really focus on when we're working with individuals. So let me try and summarize what I'm talking about here. The key to unlocking your potential. Number 1, you've got to understand the human iceberg. Some of the biggest mistakes I see in learning development and in trying to unlock the potential in yourself and in others is when we just go straight for behaviors and characteristics and try and improve them without any thought process into the below the stuff. And that is why you get quick wins, but then you quickly revert to type. Because the minute your unconscious motivators are compromised or your sense of purpose is being challenged, you are likely to trigger into counterproductive behavior. 2, explore beneath the waterline. I would implore you to do this yourself from a personal perspective and then deliver that to the teams and the people around you as well. And 3, you've got to connect the dots. And I believe, without it sounding like a pitch, I believe we do this very well at Trans 2. It is a very unique ability to be able to connect the dots between the bottom and the top and make somebody understand that and use it and leverage it to be in a really positive manner. And I put there at the bottom, you will always be more regulated, motivated and driven by your why and your where than anybody else's, than any company's vision, any company's strategy or goals. You will always be more motivated and self-fulfilled by your own why and your own where than anybody else's. And I guess the final point, a story to finish. I worked recently with an organization and the CEO said to me, he said, "Martin, I need your help. We've got an employee who's negative. We've got an employee who's disruptive. This employee questions everything. They're not communicating with other departments very well. And I really think I'm going to have to make a tough decision. Will you come and do the human iceberg and see if you can find out anything I'm missing?" He said, "But Martin, let me tell you this person's a director as well." He said, "So it's a really, really tricky situation." So I went and I spent some time with this person and this individual. We had a series of one-to-one sessions, and he was absolutely right. This person was negative. This person had a static or a fixed mindset. They seemed incredibly closed. They were almost pushing back on any change in the business. And I thought, yeah, I can see his point here. And then we went down to the second 2 levels of the iceberg, and what we uncovered was something entirely different. When we uncovered his motivators were actually being triggered by certain things in the business that the CEO wasn't aware of. This person thrived on authority. He didn't like being dictated to. If you gave him empowerment, he would absolutely take it and run with all the positivity in the world. But if you put an ultimatum on him, he would come out fighting. So the first thing was ownership and accountability. The second thing that came out from his motivators was that he liked routine. He liked things to be done the way they should be done. And if anything came in from the side and meant change or disruption, he instantly closed up. Especially if it was put onto him in a meeting for the first time as a director. So we made 2 changes. I fed this back and we made 2 simple changes. Before any change happens in the business, he's brought into a separate meeting 48 hours before and we give him the heads up on what's about to happen. He's then got a chance to close up, because your motivators are your motivators, but he's got 2 days to digest it, come back with any concerns and get his hand around. So when we're live in the meeting, he is not going to disrupt it any longer. The second thing we did is gave him ownership over change programs. He runs them. He's accountable for them. This instantly gave him the sense of purpose to be able to run with it. It aligned with his motivators, and guess what it did? It fueled better communication with the other departments. 18 months on, that director is in an entirely different space. The CEO said, "Martin, I was wrong." And by looking under the covers and just digging a little bit deeper into behaviors and why they're happening, you can come out with an entirely different outcome. He unlocked his potential. through a bit of understanding. And he said to me on session 4, Martin, I feel for the first time in the last 10 years that somebody gets me. I feel like somebody gets me. That could have ended up like any other situation where he was exited and the business would have suffered as a result. It's a really, really powerful thing. I put there, the eyes are useless if the mind is blind. It's a great quote that I love. We observe behaviours, we hear things, and we form perceptions. And if we are not looking deeper than that and understanding what's regulating that and why that's happening, we can miss out on opportunities and we are not unlocking our full potential.